Alright guys, so I know I'm going to get the motor of this F650 GS to run. Definitely, I'm confident we're going to get it right. If you saw in the previous video, the internals of the engine look perfect. We're waiting on the cylinder head gasket and the bottom of the cylinder sleeve base gasket to come in. Once that's here, we're going to get that motor together. But in the meantime, we're going to make it a one-of-one, so stay tuned, because this bike is going to get bespoke spray paint job by myself in a barn to make this bike look awesome, man. I'm going to start getting this bike fairings and parts cleaned up and sprayed and put back on while I wait for this gasket. So enjoy guys, stay tuned. Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Motorrad. In this episode we get the front end sorted, so we're going to be doing the shocks, possibly the front light, possibly some wiring. Stay tuned, let's get this bike together. Oh, hello guys, fork is done, all sorted. It's now a good pogo stick. Just joking. Alright guys, I've got both the shock absorbers out. I've actually reconditioned this one, so I've got a new oil seal, I've got a new dust cover, and I've got fresh 10 weight fork wheel in there with a cap back on. This one is ready to go back in, but not just yet. I might want to just polish up a little bit of steel wool on these, a little bit of rust pits just to prevent that seal from leaking again. But I thought maybe I could show you how to put it together, and how the shocks come apart. Basically, I've whacked this one loose already. What you will have to do is remove there's an Allen screw at the bottom there. I'll show it to you. I think it's a M6 if I'm not mistaken. So you unscrew that from the bottom of the shock absorber. Once that's been unscrewed, I did mention to you that at the top there is a retainer with a little circlip. You've got to remove that circlip and push down and remove the retainer. Once that's happened guys, you can simply remove your dust cover. On the inside of the shock, and I know it's always difficult to see these things on programs, but there is basically a retaining circlip that holds your oil seal in, your fork seal, oil seal in. Very simple, just with a little flat screwdriver, very easy to pry out. Once that circlip is out, it sits in the inside of the housing. It's got an indentation where that lives. You've basically got to get rough with your shock or your fork. You got to keep whacking it up because there's a bearing in there, and the seal, you got to keep pulling up and smashing it till it releases, something like that. It's not as easy as that guys, but this one was pretty stuck actually. But you got to keep whacking it and whacking it up. Once that happens, this is what you're going to find inside. A whole bunch of dirty oil, obviously fork oil. You can then remove the old oil seal. You'll see on the inside there's a little spring. I don't know if you can see that, I'll bring it closer. Anyway, that faces down, the writing faces up when you reinstall it. It's as simple as that. On the inside you will find a sleeve, a steel sleeve, a metal sleeve from the top. Just be careful, obviously these are all still dirty. Keep your orientation, keep your space clean. I know I'm working on the floor, but it's just the easiest way for me to record. You have then got there'll be a washer on top here, and your spring pops out like so. Once your spring is out, you can get there's a washer that hooks to the bearing. That should simply, your hydraulic should slide out with the spring. We give this all a good wash. We get all the seals back in. We top up with 475 mils of oil, and that's the shock absorber fitted. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all these parts, and I'll show you the assembly process. Alright guys, looking awesome. All our parts are cleaned, polished, and ready to go back together. And I will, for you F650 GS guys out there wanting to do this yourself, I will show you the reassembly process the way I do it. So let's go. It's good to keep everything in order. You'll see I've got everything lined up in order on the floor in terms of order of installation. I've got my new oil seal and dust cover ready to go. I like to use a little bit of grease. That's just to protect the new oil seal on installation. I have also got the universal fork hammer or ram, whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of other DIY tips and tricks out there. We want to start with main sleeve. That's what I'm gonna do. So basically our hydraulic with a spring goes back in the way we took it out. Just put it in there slowly, slide it down the well, and it should pop up on the other side. There we go. As easy as that. That then needs to be installed into the bottom part of your shock absorber, the main exterior housing, all the way to the bottom. Get our spring that will sit on top of that hydraulic. The taper then goes down. That spring is now pressing. What I then like to do is flip this shock absorber around, press on it a little bit, because that's what's going to allow us to hold that hydraulic shaft in place so that our little Allen key screw can find its thread easily without that piece slipping back down. There we go. So what we'll do is we'll turn that down by hand. When you want to button it up, it doesn't have to be too tight. I think it's about 15 Newton meters of torque. Right, once you've got that done, just keep your finger on the spring. You can then flip it around again. Alright, now we're going to want to work that bearing down. So we take our washer. There's a metal washer that sort of sits on top of that bearing. Slip that over and down. And I'm going to use our ram tool. I'm going to pop that over it, get it into the groove. Our ram tool over the shock absorber shaft. So there we go. The idea is just to get that bearing down. It does clip in pretty easily, and we can rotate this around to make sure that it's even on all ends and it has gone down, which it has. That won't separate anymore. Now we need to get our oil seal back in. That's our new oil seal. You've got a spring on that side of the seal. That's going to face down into the shock or the fork, and the other end with the writing will face up. So I like to just take a touch of grease. This is general purpose grease. Just wrap it, put a little bit around the new seal to help it slip down. It is already quite oily on this shaft, and this shaft has a little bevel at the top which actually helps you get the seal in. Just go slowly but surely. You don't want to damage the seal at all. I get it as far down as I can with my hands. Once that's starting to go down, I can then use our hammer tool and give it a couple of whacks. And the idea here, guys, is to make sure that once you bottom out, that you can actually see the groove that your retaining clip or your C clip is going to be sitting in. And as soon as you can see that, you most likely got it to a happy spot. So I'm going to have a good look inside, try to see where I'm at with that groove, and I'm pretty satisfied that that oil seal is all the way down and that that groove is fully exposed to accept our circlip or C-clip or whatever you want to call it, retaining clip. Very simple with that. I just started off on one end with my hands to a point where it's all sort of just in at the top. I can then take a little flat screwdriver, just go around and press our clip where it gets accepted into that groove. Easy as that, guys. I've then got our new dust cover seal on. Again, just a little bit of grease to make it easy to go all the way down. You can use a tool to press it down, but most of the time these you can get in by hand. We now need to get our smaller steel washer. It goes on top of our spring. Sit down in there, extend the fork. There we go. And our steel shaft down there. It's now time to fill up with oil. Get our top retainer back in, and I'll show you how we do that. I've got my oil prepped. So what I'm using motorcycle motor oil 10W medium. 1 litre is enough on this motorcycle, guys, because it's 475 milliliters per fork or shock absorber. I've just used the Pyrex measuring beaker. Fill up our fork nicely here, all in there because it's measured out. Now that our fork oil is in, The tricky bit is putting that retainer back in, and I'll show you how I do it. Looking for somewhere to hold it stable while I press that down. And I'm going to fasten not the top Allen key, but the bottom one, only because I feel that if you tighten the top one and you over tighten it, you could possibly struggle with that retaining clip going back in. Just nip it a little bit, doesn't have to be crazy. That's not the correct installation of the forks. I'm just purely using that fork to hold the shock for me while I get that in. Bring it in and show you what we're talking about here. So basically we need to get that top retainer back in. It's got a little bit of grease on there. I'm going to leave that grease there for now. It's a little circlip that needs to go back in. And basically what we do, we've got to get that retainer back in on top. And what that calls for is for us to press down on it and push the circlip in. Circlip started, and I push the circlip down with the top cap until it clicks into place. And that's what I'm about to do. I don't know if you can see that, but that's going down, and then I need to get a circlip in there. You see that? That's down, get a circlip in. That's what we do. Okay, awesome. Shock absorbers are refitted. While they are in place, it's probably before putting the front wheel back on, the best time to clean them. It allows you to spin them around. Obviously they can spin around because there's no wheel on them. Allows you to spin them around and clean them. I'm not too happy with the finish on these, so I've gone ahead and put our dust covers right at the top there. I've taped up our forks, the top end, and you guessed it, I've wire brushed it, and I'm about to paint them black. Alright guys, I've got my headlight unit sanded and rinsed and cleaned twice. The thing with spray painting or painting any product is to make sure your hands are clean, or you wear gloves. You don't want to be touching it on too much, because the oils of your hands or oil from touching things around the workshop will contaminate the paint job and the effect you're going to get. That's it, we're not going to get carried away. That's our first coat, starting to look better. We'll set that down to dry, and while that dries, I'm going to start stripping on the handlebars and prepping other bits and bobs that need doing. Let that dry. Okay, this is an awesome moment. A headlight and a headlight stay bracket always make the bike look like a bike and give it character, but obviously first we'll have to clean. A little bit of soapy water. I know nobody's ever going to look in here, but at least I'll have peace of mind that it's been done. Here we go, all cleaned up, ready for that headlight. Here's our refreshed headlight. What do you guys think of the screen? Tell me in the comments below whether you think it's a good looking screen. I don't think it helps with that wind noise a lot of people complain about on these bikes apparently. Well, I think that's it, looking good. The limbs coming off on this cloth, shouldn't they? Okay, let's get this tape off. That's going to be a good moment. Guys, this BMW is starting to come together, and I love it. I love it when things come together. Look at that. Okay guys, we are almost getting there with a bit of stuffing around yesterday. Well, we're back at it today. I had to do a little bit of problem solving. I was turning the motor, I was getting zero compression, everything was escaping through the exhaust port, and not sure why, or I wasn't sure why, so I took everything out again off camera, double checked everything, and basically when I was moving the cylinder head around when it was uninstalled, in the previous video we did check the valve clearances and they were spot on, but on these shim caps underneath on the shim spaces, they had moved, so I had to reinstall them, make sure they were seated correctly, because it was making zero clearance or a negative clearance, which means when I was on top dead center for compression stroke, the exhaust valve was actually pushing down on the shim caps or shim buckets, whatever you want to call them, and obviously opening the valve and allowing air to escape. So problem sorted. I've double checked valve clearances again after just making sure that my shim spaces were seated straight and true. I double checked both while we were there. Okay, having said that, we have come to the conclusion of timing, double checking compression, putting a new cylinder head gasket in, and putting in a new barrel base gasket. It's time to close this engine, guys, and I've got my cover ready to go. That's our top cover. Some people call it a tappet cover. Okay, there we go. It's just a series of bolts. And boom, just like that, our motor's got a new head gasket, our motor's timing is checked, our valve clearances are checked, our cylinder barrel base gasket is in. It's time to give this engine a wash. Like, share, subscribe, guys. The next video, this should be washed up and put back into the bike. Enjoy.